Welcome back to our strawberry drawing. In this section, we're going to start adding the seeds to our strawberry, and I'm going to try some different techniques. There's different ways we could do this, but for the sake of learning, we're going to start mixing and matching some stuff here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my pencil is layer. I'm going to toggle that on. I'm going to go to the opacity, in fact, by touching the N button, or the letter N, and I'm going to turn up the opacity because I want to see it again. In fact, I'm going to select that layer and go to black. So I'm going to start drawing with my pencil again. Go to my brushes, grab a pencil from the sketching section, and I want to think about where these seeds are going to go. Now, in a real strawberry, there's probably seeds all over the place, but I don't want to draw a million seeds, and this is more of an icon than a realistic strawberry. So what I want to do is I want all those seeds to line up. So in the sketch layer, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to figure out that looks like my center point. And then maybe there's some lines around it. But instead of just drawing straight lines like this and putting seeds on those lines, I want them to have some curve to the strawberry, since the strawberry is kind of round. So what I'm going to do is up at the top, I'm going to say, okay, it curves like this down. And then there's another line. Whoops. Pencil was a little sideways when I started that. Another line like this. And then, of course, underneath it, we have an arcing line, and then underneath that we have another arcing line, and that should give us the lines we need to start adding seeds to this strawberry. So I'm going to go back to my layers, and I'm going to turn the opacity down just so I can see where those lines are. And of course, those seeds are going to go on their own line. So I'm going to go to the leafy layer line, and then I'm going to tap the plus button, and on this layer I'm going to rename this seeds. There we go. Now what's going to make the seeds cool? I'm going to do a little demo here to show you what I'm talking about. One of the things that's going to make the seeds cool is, say we have our strawberry. So let me come in here and I'll just grab the right tool, like a pen tool. There we go. Say we have our strawberry. I'll fill it in quickly. And I'm going to grab a nice color for the seed, maybe a yellowish color. If I just drew that, it doesn't really look realistic. That's not quite what I'm going for. I want that seed to have a little bit of a shadow to it. So I'm going to undo those, and I'm going to grab the darker color for my strawberry by tapping and holding, and then I'm going to draw in the circles. It's kind of like something like that. They're off center, but I'm not going to worry about it. That's going to act as my shadow, and now when I come here and get a yellowish, orangish color, and I come in and I add that up there like that, now my seeds have that little bit of a shadow underneath it, and I think that adds something to it. And then I could even go a little further and add a lighter color of yellow, boop, right there on the top, like it's a little, light glow. And I think when we place these kinds of seeds on our strawberry, it's going to look pretty good. All right, so now that we know what we're going to do, I'm going to get rid of this on this layer. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on that seeds layer, and one of my options is clear. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on clear. Boom, clears everything on that layer. All right, so one of the things that's going to happen is that we've got different colors on the strawberry. So if I grab, say, this pink, and I start drawing, that pink will work there as a shadow, but if I put the pink here, it won't work as a shadow because it's a different shade. I'm going to have to grab a darker shade. So we're going to use some layer tools to help us do this. Layer blend modes is actually what they're called, and I'm going to show you what happens here. So what I'm going to do for my shadow part is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to grab a nice shade of black, and we're going to rough in where these little seeds go. And I'm going to put one here, I'm going to put one there, I'm going to put one here, I'm going to put one here. I'm going to put my first one right there, maybe my second one right there, one there, and one there. And I'm going to alternate them on the line below, kind of get them intermittently in between, just like that, and then interchange them again. As you can see, the black is just not a very realistic color for a strawberry shadow, but we are going to fix that in a minute. Going to get that shadow in there, in there, in there. Get one up here, and up here. Just a little one up there, and then another one up here. Cool. So let me get my strawberry back to where it was and undo that accidental line there. Now let's talk all about blending modes. I'm gonna go to my layers. In that letter N, if I tap on it, that lets me change my opacity, also has a whole bunch of other things on here. You'll see right now it's on normal, which means this layer is blending normally. So if you put black on it, it looks black. But there's lots of other things here. We're going to be using a couple of them here or there. And what all of these different things do is they're like different ways that light passes through your layer. So for example, I could use something like soft light, and you see what happened there is that these just became a darker shade of red on whatever color they're on. Hard light's going to be a different variation. That's going to keep it black. And sometimes you just have to play with these and see what's going to happen. I want to find the one called color. Oh yeah. So this one's called color, and basically every layer below it takes on the color of the thing on top. So the thing on top was black. So what does it do? It colors everything black underneath it. And since that pink wasn't a perfect black, it makes it a shade of gray. So it kind of gives you an idea. I want to use something called overlay. I think this is a very nice effect. It works pretty well. So I'm going to set these shadows to overlay, and then let's zoom in and I can show you what's happening. And actually, I'm going to turn off my sketch layer while I'm in here. It's easier to see. And you can see that it's darker in one place than it is in another place. That way, no matter where I put these shadows, they're going to take on the color of what they're on top of, if that makes sense. Now, our next step, you might think, okay, cool. Let's add the seed part. There's going to be a problem. This is going to be the fun part. Don't worry. We'll get through this. If I add that, oh, that doesn't look like a seed. That looks wrong. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the seeds on their own layer. So I'm going to rename this layer seeds. And I'm going to name our original seeds layer, rename it. I'm going to name it seeds shadow. There we go. So that way I know what is seeds and what is shadows. So now I can come into my seed layers, and I'm just going to add a little bit of yellow on all of these right above the shadows, just like that. And I'm just going to power through these. Okay, obviously I sped that up so you didn't have to watch me painstakingly color them all. But now I'm going to add a little bit of that little light flare. So I'm going to grab a slightly lighter color, and I'm just going to come in at the top of all these and just add a little dot, just to add a little bit of shine to those seeds, just like that. I don't think I'll fast forward through this part because I think I can do this quick and keep you guys from falling asleep there. There we go. Add a little flash to each and every one. Boom, 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 boom. Get a little guy in that, and that, and that. There we go. So when I zoom out, you can see we have a strawberry, and it looks all right. Now, one thing I do notice is it feels to me like the seeds are a little off center. I wish I could just nudge them down just a little bit. So I'm going to do exactly that. What I want to do is I want to grab each of these seed layers. I want to grab both layers, move them at the same time. Because if I use my move tool, I'd move that top layer, but not that shadow layer. And what's the good of that? So I'm going to come into my layers palette. And when I want to select a second layer at the same time, I swipe to the right on it. And now, when I go to that arrow tool in the upper left-hand corner, it allows me to move them all at once. So I can just move them down a little bit. I could even take this little box here at the top, and I can rotate it if I grab that green line on the top, just like that. When I tap on the arrow, there we go. That's how I want my seeds to look. The next thing I want to talk about is grouping. You can group layers together into a folder. So I'm going to go back to my layers palette, because what I want to do is I want to duplicate this strawberry. So in order to do that, I want to group them together without losing my layers. So each layer I'm going to swipe to the right on, just like that. And you can see they all turn a different shade of blue. And then in the upper right hand corner of that, I could either delete this, which I really don't want to do, or I could group it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tap on group, and the group has a little arrow by it, so I can collapse that group to make it easier to read. And more complicated illustrations, it's really handy. Or I could tap that arrow to open it up. Of course, like everything else, you can tap on that and get some options. Basically only two for groups, rename or flatten. I'm going to rename it to single strawberry. cool beans. And then when I'm done, just turn that little keyboard off and I'll close that down. And there we go. That's now part of a group. Now, once something's part of a group, you guessed it, just like before, we can easily take it with our arrow tool and we can move the entire group at the same time. And it's a big time saver. I'm going to turn that off. Let me go back to my layers. You probably have noticed before when you swipe to the left on something, you get a series of options. For example, you could duplicate a layer or you could delete a layer, or there's this option to lock a layer. And you might be thinking, what does that do? How do you lock a layer? Well, once a layer is locked, you can't add any more paint to it. So say, for example, my pencil layer is perfect and I don't want to accidentally, go drawing on my pencil layer. Well, one of the things I could do is I could lock it. And that means if I come in here with a paintbrush, I'll try to draw and it's going to say lock it. What does that mean? Well, if I lock a layer, that means I can't draw on it anymore. So let me turn up the opacity of this layer. I can't, it's locked. Anyway, if I want to draw on it, I'll close my layers and I'll start painting and let's see what happens. Oh, it gave me an error. It says locked layer and it gives me the options to unlock it or open layers. And what this allows you to do is like, for example, my sketch layer, oftentimes I'll make a new layer and I'll forget to switch to it. If you lock a layer like that, it means that you're not going to accidentally draw on it. It's going to throw that error at you, which can be handy at times. The other thing we could do when we swipe on those layers is obviously duplicate, and that's exactly what I'm going to do with this strawberry. I'm going to duplicate that group, and by duplicating that group, let me grab that. You can see that I can move this strawberry around. I can grab that little green dot at the top and rotate it a little bit. I can grab the group below it, grab my arrow tool, and that's going to allow me to shrink it. I have my selection tools down below. We'll talk about those a little bit later. But I'm going to shrink that down and I'm going to move that up a little bit, maybe tilt it. There we go. And like everything else, you can select two groups at once by swiping to the right on one of them while you have another selected, and that's going to let me, move my strawberries in there just like that. And of course, since one strawberry is on top of the other, there's obviously going to be some cast shadow there. So I'm just going to come in here, create a new layer in between those two groups, grab that darker shade of red by tapping and holding on it. And then I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to draw a little bit of definition so we can see that those are two separate strawberries, something like that. So that's layers. There's a lot of important concepts that we went over here, and I know I went through a lot of them quickly. But as we go through the next couple lessons, think of this as a primer because we're going to be using layers and some of their styles, groups, and other things a lot as we go forward. So we're going to have a lot of opportunity to reinforce some of the things that we've learned here.